This is how legends are made.
Legendary.
There's so many legends in this building today.
Legendary.
Well, welcome to Legendary, the podcast. I'm Kevin Jonas Sr., and today we have an amazing opportunity. We're able to speak with Busted from the UK. As a group, they have traveled the world, and we have benefited from their music in ways that are special. I really am looking forward to this discussion. Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, man.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for having us on, man.
It's my pleasure. I've been aware of your music, obviously, for a long time, and we'll get to that later. But thank you, guys. I have been a fan, loved your music, loved the TV show when you guys were doing it here, and congratulations on the continued success.
Thanks a lot. You were the one viewer. It was you.
I was, along with my kids.
Yeah, that was the one TV that watched it in America, yeah.
Well, that was me. I pay attention.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. That was the weirdest kind of thing for us, that we'd never really done anything like that. And to be honest, reality TV wasn't really a thing then. It was just kind of like kind of becoming, and they kind of came to us and said, do you want to like do a show of you going to America? Because we were kind of we were really big in the UK at the time, and we'd never really tried the States. And so it was, but when you say reality TV, it was a very different experience what we experienced filming that show. It was kind of very you know, they were like, well, so we're going to play this show, but no one's going to turn up. And we're like, what? How does that work? You know, so it's kind of, it was, you know, it was slightly formulaic, but it was, but I had a great time. Like, I loved America most of all. So it was,
I think they call those docu-follows now.
Yeah.
Where they kind of follow you around, and they will throw a few things in there, but for the most part, they're just following your life. And but for those that aren't aware, MTV was the host for the guys' show as they came to the US, and it was actually fascinating to watch you guys make your way here. We were watching with interest because that was right at the beginning stage of Jonas Brothers individually and collectively coming together. So we
Jonas Brothers formed at that point when we came over. They were then, they weren't a band.
They were, so Nick and Joe were doing Broadway at that time.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so let's go back, guys. I would love for everybody that's watching and listening, I would love to know the background. I know we have some upcoming things that are exciting, but I would love to know how this group of guys got together. How did it form? You know, what are the origins of Busted?
So Matt and I auditioned. We, you know, had the dream of being in a band, as a lot of people, I suppose, did at the time. I think now people tend to want to be YouTubers, but, you know, back then people wanted to be in bands, and we auditioned for a band that we didn't get into, like we weren't successful. And we ended up starting our own band together and looking for somebody to be in that band with us. And that turned out to be Charlie. And we started the band together. And we got signed really quickly after Charlie joined. We labels were very interested straight away. Simon Cowell, I went to his office and we played for him acoustically in his office, and to our like amazement, he just said right there and then that he wanted to do it, and which was a big shock for us because he was regarded at the time as being this huge gatekeeper to the music business. And the word spread around the music business that he was interested in us, and then we ended up signing to Universal, and then we started to put out records.
Yeah, we literally went round. I remember went around all the record companies just with like a couple of acoustics, and we just go into like their offices and just play some songs. I think at the time a lot of pop bands like didn't play instruments, so I think just they were shocked that what is this pop band doing with instruments in their hands? You know, it's like I thought that was kind of weird. I was like, actual musicians, So yeah.
It's quite a big move when you think about it, like actually going in and playing for them. Like, I'm not sure if that kind of stuff happens a lot.
No.
Like, our manager was like, no, you got to go in and play for them. I was like, it's a bit cringy playing in a a boardroom or like someone's office, but it worked kind of like, and we would go for it. Like we'd jump around and jump off furniture and stuff in their offices and kind of like give them the full thing, you know.
That is rare today. I mean,
yeah.
A&R today, a lot of it is just what's breaking on TikTok.
Well, exactly. Exactly. I mean, A&R won't even look at a band unless they've got a certain amount of numbers on TikTok, which I find really sad personally, because I feel like, you know, there was that magic of, you know, even with, especially with rock bands, you know, there's a magic of being in a club somewhere and an A&R guy will just tip up and just watch the magic and then be like, yeah, I want to invest in this project, or I want to invest in this band, you know?
Well, I heard a statistic recently that only 2%, and this came from a top level guy at Universal, only 2% of songs that break out, and those artists are signed, only 2% have a successful second single.
Really?
Wow. It's really interesting, Kevin, that you say that about that A&R is TikTok now. Because it's funny, because obviously when we started the band 20 years ago, I really, you know, we all really wanted to make music and release music. And funnily enough, 20 years later, we still quite like do the same thing.
Yeah. Because it's about the music. You guys are real musicians. You're true writers. You're involved in the craft. I think we're losing a lot of that today.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're really experiencing, like what you're saying, is that how things have changed. You can arrest people's attention now on TikTok in so many different ways, and it doesn't have to be with music. And I think just the art of making songs and all of that is turning into, it's a little bit like poets. You know, people don't really care about poets. Like it's almost like songwriters and singer-songwriters are going down this poet road where they're just not as relevant in people's culture, right?
Yeah.
I think what was cool about Busted at the beginning was that it really broke a mold of, as I say, like I remember that after the first year of Busted arriving on the scene, like guitar sales went through the roof in the UK, and a lot of people attributed that to our band, and I find that extraordinary, and that was an amazing thing to be a part of. Do you know what I mean? Like kids were not, you know, I guess it's happening now a bit with you know, people getting into electronic music production and that kind of stuff, which is again is a good thing if kids are going to get into their bedroom and start producing their own songs off the back of watching some artist do it. But I feel like that was a great part of the Busted legacy, is that we sort of got kids into playing music, which I think was cool.
Amazing. Now, let me ask you a question. You go in, you do these acoustic sets in front of gatekeepers, record companies. Did you have recorded music at that point, or were you doing your original songs acoustically?
We did have recordings of our songs, but what happened was, I mean, I remember the Simon Cowell meeting quite vividly. We played for him first, and then he didn't say anything. We had 4 songs. We thought he might stop us sooner. We were prepared for him to stop us at any time. And we played to the end of the songs that we had prepared, and we just said, oh, that's all we have now. And he still didn't really give anything away. And then he said, have you recorded anything yet? So we handed him a CD which had 4 songs on it, recorded. And they sound pretty close to what they are now, like on the album. And they were our singles, the singles that we released, the first 4 singles.
And those were?
Well, actually, it wasn't all 4 of them. It was like three of the 4. It was What I Go to School For, Year 3000, I think. Sleeping
Light On.
Crash and Burn, and that, and maybe Sleeping with the Light On, like one other song.
Wow. That's quite a collection of songs. I mean, you know, for the Jonas fandom that pays attention and listens to this podcast, obviously 2 of those songs were instrumental in the world of Jonas, which we'll get to. But the fact that you walked in with those classics and that was a part of it, you know, a lot of people in traditional A&R would say, where are your singles? You guys walked in with singles.
Yeah. They were like, where's the rest of the album?
I think that was a big reason why the planets lined up for us to get signed. I think like they liked the acoustic performance, but I think it really kind of sealed the deal when we handed them produced versions of the songs. I think they saw the whole thing, you know.
So how long did it take from that moment to the premiere of your music?
We signed the deal when we signed a record. Well, the buzz with the Simon Cowell meeting was before Christmas in 2001, and we signed a deal with Universal in March 2002. And then after signing the deal in March 2002, it was about 6 months before our first single came out.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah,
it was really fast.
Compared to a lot of things today, I mean, obviously, if a song breaks out on TikTok and people chase it, that's a different animal. But, you know, I've had quite a few people end up in A&R hell, and they're stuck there. I get, you know, I take them to a label, they sign them, and sometimes after a year, A&R will say, well, we probably should have gone with what you came in with.
Yeah.
And,
but also, I feel like that's the complete turnaround for where the industry is now, because all of the sort of honing of a band or figuring out the sound or all that stuff, it was usually done behind closed doors. And the first thing the public saw was the version that everyone wanted to show the world. Whereas now it's the other way around. TikTokers or whatever literally start doing stuff in their bedroom and everyone can see it. So it's like, so everything is in the glare of everyone else. And I think that makes it harder, because if you want to sort of go in a new direction or try different things, everyone can still see you. Do you know what I mean? So I think it was nice back then when you could sort of take the time, work on songs, write songs, and then sort of come to the public eye with a honed vision.
Work on everything. Work on the songs. Work on the music videos. Work on the whole presentation. Work on it all. And like when you're ready to reveal it. You know.
Yeah. Were you guys doing live shows to kind of hone that part of your craft as well?
In 2004, our touring in the UK was like really. We've still got like the like the plaque on the wall from the touring of that year, and it's just like an insane run for a band that's touring in the UK. It's like, when you look back on it, it's like, we joke about things. Oh, things are crazy now. That was crazy, you know?
Yeah. I mean, at the time we'd broken the world record for the most amount of Wembleys played back to back.
Wow.
And that record was held until One Direction broke it about 10 years later, and I don't think it's been broken again, but like that was really a nuts year.
Yeah. Well, I know what that feels like, and it's hard to describe for people when that rocket ship takes off.
Yeah.
And
it rarely takes off. The thing is that very few people actually experience that. Do you know what I mean? Like that sort of everything coming together. And I feel very fortunate that we did, because, you know, it's a very rare event, really. If you think about how many people are releasing music and how many artists there are, as James said, for these stars to align is a very rare event.
Yeah. And people care, or they wouldn't dip into their wallet. You know, I had some advice early on, and it was a lady named Barbara Jones, who is working actually with my youngest son now on his music, managing him. And she was the head of marketing. And she said, Kevin, I'm just telling you, we've got to get you out there, because the wallet is the last thing to come. And that is true, unless you catch that rocket. And then people care, and they spend, and they buy merch, and they buy tickets, and they come multiple times. And
it's true.
That is when we heard about you guys. The buzz in the US was real. And that was even prior to the guys, you know, it was Broadway, and then Nick signed a solo deal. Then it became the Jonas Brothers. But you could not miss that something was happening across the water. And you guys were kind of trendsetters, and you really were an influence on all of the things that were coming during that time. Whether you felt like the impact was there in the US, it was.
Yeah, I mean, I felt we came to the US when we did the show. We played a few shows. I remember we played in LA, a few things. We played.
We did one in Seattle, James.
Sorry?
We did one in Seattle, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. But I remember, like, the thing I'm remembering is, like, in LA, we did a few things like Wango Tango, or we did like something at a fair.
Oh yeah, the ones with this where we wore the socks and the shorts.
You wore those funny shorts, and then what was so funny is that I remember like you would have all this talk, because radio back then in America was a whole different ball game to the UK. You have like Radio 1, Radio 2, Capital FM. You have some key things in the UK, but in America, it's so fragmented with the different formats and the different states, and trying to do radio promo in America, it's like a tour in its own thing.
Yeah, it is.
And everyone was saying, how you've got to be here, you've got to spend time here. America's a whole different thing. But what I was seeing when we were playing shows is that the people were actually no different. They would like, if anything, they're a bit more excited, because I think when a band comes internationally, there's a feeling of that it's like not so often to see them, it's a rarer occurrence. And so I felt the excitement was there. But for us, I think we were going through so much, like with the band in the UK, and the band caught fire, like, and the way the world was back then, it was before Twitter, before Instagram, before social media. And it was really hard for the label to justify sending us away from the UK, because it was just so insane. Our schedule in the UK was crazy. And I just think that we weren't together long enough. The band was only together since we released the first single, it was 2 years and 3 months till we broke up, so we didn't have any time for the States,
Yeah. Well, even to this day, there are places around the world that my sons have not been able to go, just because you get caught up in that whirlwind of opportunity, and you have to keep sowing. And sometimes I wonder whether you have to feed it as much as we did. And I'm sure you guys probably asked the same thing. But they've still, to my knowledge, never gone to Australia.
Oh,
and
really?
They have a song, Australia.
They've never toured Australia?
No. And they will eventually, and they've been big there for a long time, but they just, the tour routing never really worked. So you said you were together for 2.5 years, and that was full on. First single comes out, it's a hit. Second single comes out, it's a hit. Third single, well, I think your third single went #1, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so it went 3, 2, 1.
Crazy. I mean, that even with a consolidated market with, Radio 1 and all the rest, any song in any market that can sustain and hit 3, 2, 1 back to back is massive.
Yeah, it was crazy. I think that was another one.
It's crazy that you know all the stats. Kevin's got all the info.
Well, my wife said to me many, many years ago, someday you're going to be able to use all this useless knowledge. So now we're doing a podcast. Yeah, I like stats. I like knowing what's going on around the world. And I have to tell you guys, knowing that there was a little bit of, okay, this could eventually be the Jonas Brothers together as a band, and the evolution of how that happened, I was keeping my eye on it, and you guys were like, okay, they're doing it. And there was really very few in that pop punk pocket that were doing that quality of music and had energy live. And there were so many things that I was hearing about that I felt like you guys were going to come over and probably even take that space. So I was even a little concerned, like watching, like, uh-oh. They might
Kevin, you
get there ahead of
Charlie. You have Charlie to thank for that personally, because I remember at the time, when I first saw the Jonas Brothers, this is like winding forward a little bit, but I had no idea I was going to see them. It was like on a television Miley Cyrus concert. I was at a friend's house and they came on stage singing Year 3000, and I think Joe was wearing like a gold jacket, and I remember thinking, this must be the Jonas Brothers, because you know, I know all about this, but I had no idea it was, you know, because you don't know things are gonna, you know, and we're not in the States. So
Right.
before Miley, I guess when we were coming with our TV show at the time, Hilary Duff was kind of
Right.
the person that they wanted us to go on tour with, and Charlie said no. So,
Well, thank you, Charlie.
Did Jonas Brothers end up doing that tour?
No, we didn't do that tour, but that was the space that we were headed towards.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So thank you for overlooking that opportunity, because Disney would have eaten you guys up with some adjustments. Now I'll back
I think
up.
it's the adjustments that I might have had an issue with.
all the adjustments.
Well, okay, so let's go there. So Nick did a solo record, and as you guys know, This Life, right? It was shelved. They kind of released a song. They didn't know what to do with it. Then they released a Christmas song. It did okay, but now we're multiple songs in. We're in a bit of a problem with that record, because, you know, we're deep into the cuts already. And they found out there were brothers. And at that time, Steve Greenberg came along, who had done Hanson. And
Hanson.
Yeah. So he had done Hanson, Joss Stone, Fountains of Wayne, Who Let the Dogs Out. And he was like, hey, this kid's the best thing here, and I hear there are brothers. So he came in and started working on a record, and it was original songs they were writing. It was a big deal for all of us that they wrote a lot of the songs. And then there was some turmoil at the top of the label. So now Nick's shelved. Now they're headed towards being shelved. And David Massey, who's well known from the UK, David Massey had signed Nick and optioned in the guys. And he said, look, we need to retool the record. Steve was now gone, and Steve is still to this day a dear friend. David is a good friend. And David's like part of our family. And he said, we have to retool the record. And there's a band in the UK that have a couple songs. And I'm like, no way. They're doing original songs. I'm a songwriter. They're songwriters. I know they're young. No way they're doing versions of hit songs. Like it's not even like they're hidden gems. You're asking us to do hit songs with a mega band. Like all I could foresee was the hate that was going to come. And they said, no. But there was already kind of a brewing, like bubbling opportunity with Disney. But we weren't on Disney. We were with Sony.
Right.
But we were already appearing. The guys were appearing at the parks, and they were doing some appearances. They were the right demo and right age for that audience. And they wanted to be sensitive to that. So not only was it then your hit songs, but retooled versions of hit songs. So I was obviously a nervous wreck. But what happened at that point was I just magical. Like they were dropped by Sony. A new guy came in who is very talented, Steve Barnett. And he's like, you guys can go. And we had just done a video to Year 3000. And he said, and you can take it. And we're like, we want all our masters. And they said, you can take it. So we took all those songs and Year 3000 in the video with us.
Wow.
So we went to Hollywood Records, and they're
Lucky.
Oh my gosh. A month later, they said, hey, we need some sibling stuff on the channel. And Hollywood Records said, well, we signed these guys and they have a song from Busted and a version that's like friendly for this market. And they put it on air, and the guys just like it went from being shelved, dropped again, shelved again, to an explosion. So we owe you guys like
That's so funny,
so
man.
much.
That's awesome, dude.
They were literally bounced around like ping pong balls for a while, and thought it was over several times. And if it had not been for your flexibility, we owe you as a family. The boys have obviously been very appreciative through the years, not without us being fearful. Your fans were like, that's a cover.
I think the thing is, all that stuff is it kind of generates just kind of even more noise about it all. I mean, because I remember where I was actually. I remember where I was when I got the phone call. I got a phone call from Dave Massey.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think it must have been, was it 2005, 2006, maybe 2006?
2006.
Something. Yeah. And the phone rang, and it was Dave Massey. We knew him because we'd played for him. He was at Sony in the UK when we were doing the rounds to see labels. And I had kind of like a good relationship with him. I kind of just knew him as a record exec.
Right.
You know, I knew him as a guy who was a powerful record executive. And he calls me, it's very out of the blue. And he said, you remember Nick Jonas? And I said, yes, I remember Nick Jonas. Because the first song I ever wrote when I went to Sweden, Nick recorded that song. It was the first ever song I'd ever written. I went to Sweden.
Is that post Busted, James?
We were in Busted at this point. This must have been like 2003, 2004. I went to Stockholm for the first time to work at, with all the Swedish guys. And we wrote this song. It was with Sarvin Katecha, and we wrote this song called Appreciate. And
love that song.
Yeah, and Nick recorded that song, and I was like stoked the song was happening. I didn't know who Nick was, but Dave told me all about it. He was young. Must have been 13, right?
He was 12 years old.
Wow.
And that song, the producers were Jarl and Evan, who found Rihanna. I mean, it was a real team.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that well. And so Dave says, remember Nick Jonas? And I said, yeah, how's that going? And he said, well, things are changing, and he's got a couple brothers, and we like to do something like Busted, and in fact, we'd like to sing some Busted songs. And I said, I don't think you need my permission for that, Dave. Surely that's like, surely you can just cover whatever you want, Right. And then he said, well, there is one thing, we don't like using certain lyrics. And I said, oh, what are the lyrics? And he said, we don't like this lyric, we don't like that lyric. It's not going to fly on Disney.
Yeah, you can't talk about the teacher's panties. You can't talk about multiple breasts.
And so I
Oh, see, it was Disney. It was Disney that shut that down. I understand.
Right.
David Massey knew that there were opportunities that were in the family-friendly camp, which worked with where we were at the time and where the guys were, but it was too obvious. Like Radio Disney was blowing up and they were like, we will embrace these guys.
If you change the boogaloo.
Yeah,
but we're not walking around singing multi-breasted women and panties on that format.
Right. So I said to Dave Massey, I said, because I was like, I certainly don't want to hold anything up. I don't want to throw any spanner in the works. So but I also didn't want to rewrite the songs.
I'm sure.
I just thought like we'd written the songs. I said to him, Dave, listen, man, we want you to do what you want to do. I don't really want to rewrite the songs, but I don't want to stop you doing what you have to do either. Maybe if you just figure out what it needs to be, make it so. But as long as the publishing doesn't change, then do what you want. And they did send back, they sent back the revised things. Yeah. And I just looked at it and said, okay, well, I mean, I wouldn't have written that, but if this is what is going to happen, this is what this band needs, I thought, well, why not? It's in America, we're not using it anymore, we're completely finished. So and I felt on it, and I didn't know, I mean, because Nick, I didn't know what was going on with him. I saw a picture of him, I heard him singing, I didn't know, right. And I certainly didn't know that they would become what they became. I just kind of, honestly, if I'm honest, I didn't think I would hear anything about it ever again. Flash forward to here it is, you know, on the Miley Cyrus thing. So, and then everyone, it was weird. I went to a water park to celebrate because I think there was an unfortunate thing. We had gone through a long kind of weird, it's a whole separate story, but to celebrate, like, we had some problems with our other songs, which we won. Like, we won this. When you have hit songs, a lot of people try to come after you, whatever. Right. And we'd been in a long battle with our songs, which we eventually won. And I went to celebrate at a water park, and I was with my friend. And it was right after we'd seen the Miley Cyrus thing. And my friend went, "You don't understand how huge this band are." And I was like, I guess I don't. I mean, how big are they? He goes, "Everyone here knows them." And I was like, "Really? It's that big?" He was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Watch this." He called up waiting in line to get on this huge water slide. And he goes, "Hey, you know the band Jonas Brothers?" And everyone turned around and went, "Yeah. You know the song Year 3000? And they went, "Yeah." And I went, "Oh my God, that's crazy." Like the whole park knew this. And I was like, this is
where was this?
It was at Six Flag in Santa Clarita. Like, yeah, you know?
No, guys, they literally went from shelved, dropped, and a month later,
a month, is that quick?
Your song was aired on the Disney Channel, and they were top 10 and went from like clubs to arenas in like 8 weeks. Like,
so did John Fields produce that version?
No, it was the guy that did "Hey Now You're a Rock Star."
Yeah, it was Eric Valentine.
Yeah.
Oh, so was it?
Eric worked on it.
I've told you that story, like,
and it was so times. Good. Like,
I know, but I thought that was about another. I thought that was a different. I know you probably have, but
every single time I tell you.
Yeah, he did that song, and then they were like, "You got to go in," and they had been writing and disappointed in all that had gone down, and they had the entire first record from Hollywood Records. They had been writing in a basement in New Jersey, and John
Eric was big time at that point, right? He was doing Good Charlotte.
Huge.
Massive. Taking Back Sunday. I mean, he was like in the pocket of all that explosion of rock music.
And John was, you know, coming off a Beautiful Letdown with Switchfoot. So they were both.
Both massive.
And they all realized that this is kind of the making, you know, this is a real band. These are real guys.
Yeah.
That just happened to be pop. And thankfully, you know, that group of people cared enough. But I would love to know, what was it like for you guys, knowing, one, the song was different, right? And two, that it was being used and blowing this band up. Like that literally was a catalyst. Was it mixed feelings? Was it excitement? I've waited all these years to be able to ask you that question.
I remember I got a call from James. James called me and he told me that they were going to cover the song, and I was like, "Cool, great." I didn't really think anything of it or hear anything about it, and then I got a royalty check through for the songwriting of it, and it was absolutely huge. And I was like, "Whoa, what's happened? What's happening?" You know, and then I just I went online and found a video, and I was like, "Oh my God!" So I was shocked at the lyric changes, first of all, but I didn't really I was just stoked. Like, I was stoked that the song was having a brand new life, and people that I talked to knew the Jonas Brothers, and it was kind of it was just a really cool, exciting thing.
Me, I think I was coming to America at the time. I had just gotten my visa, actually. And I was coming to New York to do more songwriting. And the song hit at the perfect time for that, because it opened up all these crazy doors. Like, my publishers would send me to different studios to do songwriting sessions. And I would show up and it would be like Stargate and, like, you know, all these like like Stargate and like espionage and like all of these crazy producers and Jim Johnson and like all of these insanely like, you know, Claude Kelly and just, you know, John to Austin, you know, like all these like people would just be like there, and we'd be writing together, and I'm pretty sure that the reason they were able to get me in those rooms was because of the success of the song with Jonas Brothers, not with Busted, because it was relevant to them.
Yeah. How about you, Charlie? I would love to know from you as well, and then I have a statement to think about it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's weird. At that time, like Matt James and I actually went for quite a long period with not really being in each other's lives. So I was sort of off doing something completely different. And so I wasn't actually made aware of it till quite further down the line. And actually, Jonas Brothers were already massive. I already knew Jonas Brothers for being Jonas Brothers before I even realized that they'd done this, because I don't feel like it was people in the UK were aware of them doing that. Like, I feel like they blew up in the UK on their own. Do you know what I mean? Without the link to Busted. Because when I first heard of the Jonas Brothers, it was at a point where it was just them doing it on their own. Do you know what I mean?
It was like SOS.
Said,
right.
It was like you probably found out about the Jonas Brothers when they were releasing like SOS.
Exactly.
Like
yes, exactly right. Exactly right. And then someone said to me, "Hey, you know these guys covered your song," and I was like, "Really?" I think I went on YouTube.
Covered. I mean, you know, and that's what I was going to say is, you know, recently, you know, I was looking at possibly investing in a classic catalog, and I looked up one of the songs, and it was like 300 covers.
Really?
And I had heard at least 50 of them, of this classic song. And I think you guys wrote a song that launched multiple ships. And that says a lot about you. It says a lot about the song. It says a lot about your skill. But we owe you a debt of gratitude, guys.
Yeah.
And I know later on, I wasn't able to be there. I was dealing with some physical issues and cancer and overcoming that. But you guys were able to get on stage with the guys, and
yeah, I see that was awesome. That was an awesome day, man.
That was like a real magic moment.
To play Wembley Stadium, which we'd never played. So we played most places in the UK, but that's one. I don't even think they'd built it at the time that we broke up. Not the new version of it, you know.
Right.
Yeah. And so when we got that call, I was like, "Oh man, that would be really fun," because at that point, obviously, you know, a lot of fans. It's funny because there's almost some arguments between fans in the UK. It's a Busted song in the Americans. I know it's a Jonas Brothers song, so it's kind of cool to put all that to bed and be like, let's just do it together.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that sort of I think that sort of brought everyone together, and everyone was like, they could be happy in the fact that you could have a song that could be big for two bands, and it's like, that's fine, you know?
Yeah, well, it's a celebration, really. I mean, it's a rare occurrence, and like, why not celebrate that? You know, I when we got the invitation to come to do that with you guys, I remember our WhatsApp group was just so positive about it. We were all like, you know, it's just, we got to do this, you know.
British fans kind of expected there to be some kind of beef between us and the Jonas, but it couldn't have been further from that. We were just stoked. So like, as soon as they asked us, we were like, that's a really good call. And it was honestly, man, a magic moment. Like when we popped out and we came on stage with them, the place went nuts. It was
I was, you know, struggling at the time, and I was watching the stream, tears rolling down my face. But
oh, really? That's awesome.
I so wanted to be there. Guys, I am so thankful for you. You have no idea. And when I say a debt of gratitude, I mean it. There are too few people that say thank you, and so a huge thank you to you guys.
That's lovely to say, Kevin. Thank you.
We're also thankful. You know, we're thankful for the guys. I mean, I remember I was around when you guys. I would come to some of your early shows in Philly. This was like early, and I think I was around a little bit coming to see the guys play before, because of the Daylight Records era of Jonas Brothers, you know, before the Hollywood records. So you know, you show it in the Happiness Begins documentary where you're in that grind when you're going around and you're playing.
Yeah.
I remember like seeing that, and because I was there for it. And I remember the original lineup, you know, all the musicians and some of those guys that are still around, you know.
Yeah, no question.
But yeah, but I mean, but it wasn't, it didn't happen. It didn't happen just because of the song, you know. It happened with the hard work that goes into being a band and what goes into building an audience.
Well, speaking of, it is really hard work. And you mentioned that you guys were together for about, what, 2.5 years, you said?
Yeah.
So why the break? What happened? Because we, you know, our family went through also a time of, hey, we need time apart, and the guys needed to pursue some individual efforts. But what led to that break? And then I want to talk about what's coming.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like obviously that's largely to do with me. I feel like the difference with what I was pursuing at the time and what most people would pursue as a solo endeavor is that my thing was so different to Busted, and almost like in a different universe. And I felt like the two things couldn't coexist because I felt like they were too opposed at that time. I mean, funnily enough, if Busted were around today, I don't think it would matter. But at the time, going from a pop band into a heavy rock band was a very difficult task. Do you know what I mean? So it was, you know, something that I felt like I had to do. And James and Matt were incredible about it. You know, it shows the kind of guys that they are, to have given me nothing but support the entire time from then to now. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that was a very hard thing for me to put on them and for them to have to deal with, and I'll be forever in gratitude for that. But, you know, when it comes to artistry, you've got to sort of follow your heart and what you think is right at the time, and that is really difficult. But that is what art is. You know what I mean? It's not a business; it's something that you do to make you happy. You know.
Well, and when it becomes a business, too often that's when it fails.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, exactly. I think people easily start to recognize that, you know, and I never wanted it to be that for us. To be honest, you know, us coming back in 2016, you know, all that time had passed and we'd had that time, you know, separated. But I think that allowed us to come back in 2016, and then we made 2 albums that I think are 2 of our best pieces of work. You know,
I think the truth is about it is that we have made a really long string of bad business decisions, but what we've learned is that the right business decision isn't always the right decision. You know, you can't lead with that. You can't lead with this is the right business decision all the time, because when we decided, okay, the band's going to break up for the reasons that it broke up, we put the band on ice. You know, we didn't try and carry anything on in some weird tragic way, you know, and burn out in this kind of weird way. We just kind of said, okay, that's it, you know. And I think because of the way that we dealt with it, it was able to come back fresh, you know. Yeah. Instead of it being weird, like, because a lot of bands, they have the success the first time, it doesn't guarantee the success the second time.
That's right.
And if you're always doing things, if you're leading with the business decision all the time, I think fans can sometimes smell that. And
I completely agree.
And it's, you know, they can feel, there's a feeling that you get, and I think that people can tell. And so it's always good to listen to, hey, you know, what is it that we want? You know, like, maybe this company want to put our faces on these acoustic guitars, but like, what is it that we want? You know, and what is it that what's best for the fans? And, you know, would we rather our fans bought real guitars, or would we rather our fans bought a cheap guitar from this department store with our faces on it, which cost like 10 quid? I mean, it should just be like, do what you think is right, you know, over for the greater good, not just the business.
Well, tell me what's ahead, because I know there, look, there's a famous quote that I love so much: if you can't beat them, outlast them. And so for the ones that outlast, you guys, you know, you're there 20 years later. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. I think that's quite an achievement in itself, because like, you know, having it's crazy to think that it's 20 years since we first started down this road, you know. So, and I think the fans feel it, you know. The fans, I feel like Busted was a big part of it. Like a lot of people's childhood is associated with Busted. Like it's a part of their sort of existence as growing up. And I think that's, as we have our favorite band. I mean, I know my favorite bands, you almost feel like they're a part of you. And do you know what I mean? And I think that's really special. So it's really cool to be able to
I'm older, but you know, there was one show in Miami and Barry Gibb was there.
Oh yeah.
And he was like sitting at the table just talking to the guys about touring with his brothers, and I was like, I was a puddle on the ground.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So wow, those bands that impact your life in that critical time where you're
critical, yeah, absolutely.
It's so important.
Yeah, I think as well, I think it's interesting because I mean, that's amazing that you got to meet Barry Gibb. I mean, that's crazy. But I feel what you were saying about being around 20 years later, a lot of people, you know, some people, they come around like, you guys broke up and then you were gone for this long and then you came back and then you took another break and now you're back. So it's not really 20 years. And I always like to I tend to use the paper airplane analogy, you know. 20 years ago, we threw a paper airplane. And it doesn't matter. We let go of the paper airplane at that point. You know, if the paper airplane's still flying 20 years, it doesn't have to, you know, it's like, once you put music out into the world, the band lives, the band breathes.
Right.
You know, you launch the paper airplane and that paper airplane flies wherever the wind takes it. And I think that the wind took that paper airplane pretty far, you know. It took it, you know, to the States. It ended up with you guys for that one song, and all the different songs live their own little lives. They're their own little paper airplanes, and you launch all these paper airplanes, and 20 years later, you look back on the last 20 years and you see where the planes went.
Yeah, and they never stopped flying. When we broke up, people didn't stop listening to Busted. They carried on listening. It was still a part of people's lives, even though we weren't active, you know?
Yeah, so I think what it is, it's like, this is what we're doing now, you know. It's like we look back on 20 years and, you know, we just feel like we want to celebrate 20 years of Busted. You know, that's what this is, you know.
So good. Well, for each of you, as a final question, if you could go back prior to even walking in that record company with those songs and could say anything to your young self 20 years ago, what would you say to a young Matt, a young James, a young Charles?
Good question, Gavin.
I would say stop and smell the roses a little bit.
Yeah.
Like there was so many times when you're thinking so far ahead, you know, that like of what's coming, and we never really had any time to absorb what was happening at the time.
Yeah, true.
It was about the next show. You're only as good as your next single. You're only as good. Like we were recording the second album whilst releasing the third single from the first album.
Right.
You know, so it was just a constant, like we were on this train and it was kind of just going, and we didn't really get a chance to absorb it. And I look back at pictures, I look back at TV performances, and it brings me such joy. And at the time, I'm not sure if I was taking that in enough.
Yeah.
You know.
That's so good.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that completely. Like I did an interview earlier on today where they showed me it was like some of the moments throughout my career, and I had to sort of talk about it on camera. And one of them was the Brit Awards, because we won 2 Brit Awards in 2004. And they showed me the video of it, and I don't really even remember it. I probably had too many beers, to be honest, but like, you know, I don't feel like I really stood there and thought, oh my God, we're at the Brits, you know. But I think I think that's probably quite a common thing, probably with the Jonas Brothers. stuff that's happened to them, they can't really remember it because it's such a blur. But just
I
taking
used to say to the guys, this is a camera.
Yeah.
Take the picture. You may not see this again.
Right.
Like, take the picture, because
mental picture.
Just let it sear into your brain matter, because you may not relive this, and you'll never relive it this age with this excitement. It'll never be like the young brother Franklin just released his song, and he's got some magical music coming.
Right.
And, I said to him and to his brothers, like, remember, guys, your first single, the fear, the excitement, like, remember it. And to Frankie, it was, there'll never be another first. This is an introduction song. It's not a single, but like, there'll never be another first. So
take it in.
Take it in. So James, what about you, man?
I was thinking about that. I don't know what I would say, because that I didn't feel. I don't know what I would say to myself that I didn't think at the time. I remember when the Brit Awards was a crazy night for us, and I remember winning the first award because we were nominated for 3 and we won 2 of them. And going on stage to pick up the first one, I told myself right there and then, if this ends tomorrow, I will be satisfied.
Yeah.
I will be satisfied with everything, and everything for me from that point on was a bonus. And it's weird because I would want to tell myself now the same things that I actually feel like I genuinely felt. I was actually, it was hard adjust when the band went away, because it was very big, and when we kind of gave way for Charlie's decision, that was a very difficult adjustment to make. It's a difficult adjustment for anyone to make, but I had this weird, like, I was like 20% excited or something, that I was getting time back, that I didn't know where I was going to be next week, or that I didn't know I was going to be next month. And there's a mystery of the unknown that comes back into your life, and that's exciting. And letting go of those things. And so I feel like I don't look back. What I'm saying is I don't look back at my time then and think, I wish I knew then what I knew now, because I actually do feel like I was so grateful. Like, being in a band was something I wanted my whole life.
Right.
I wanted it my whole life. I didn't fall into it. It wasn't a mistake or an accident. This was something that I think all 3 of us we had an agenda. We wanted to be in a band. We were seeking out a career in the music business, and it was a lot of dedication. And so I think it was natural to feel that way. I think you can never be too happy for other people's success, and I think that everyone's guilty of feeling a little bit like, it's cool, but, I wish that was us, or whatever, or I wish that was me. And I think that being happy for other people's success comes back at you in an even bigger way. So
totally agree with you. Most of my life has been spent helping people live their dream and helping people achieve it. And there's a satisfaction that comes with that I enjoy in many ways more than being on stage myself. And so I get that. I have said recently, I would not have worried as much. Like I would have said.
You mean you wish you hadn't worried so much?
I worried a lot for my artist and for my family, and a lot of that was just wasted time. So I would probably say, like, smack myself and say, hey, this is awesome. Enjoy it.
Yeah, I think because
don't worry about how other things are going to come.
Yeah, you're in a unique position because having to be, you had to take care of your father's worry, your fatherly worries, as much as your as much as anything else, and they're incredibly deep running. So I definitely wouldn't envy what you had to go through if it was the same thing.
Oh, and I wanted to do it in a healthy manner, and I think I did, but and too many parents don't. But that's the piece that I would probably like say to a younger Kevin Sr. is like, hey, stop worrying. You're not fixing it by walking around in circles in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And just enjoy. It's not as loose. It's not as easily impacted as your fear makes it appear. Look at you guys. You've taken breaks. You've taken other breaks. You've lasted 20 years, and it was never as fragile as it feels from one single to the next.
Right, man.
Yeah.
Guys, huge honor. Congratulations. I just so look forward to, look, I want to see you guys live myself because I had to miss that concert. So someday soon, I hope I get to see you guys live. But from my heart, as dad, as manager, as a fan, thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin.
For those listening, thank you. Please follow, please subscribe, do all the things and share with others. And make sure you go check out, if you don't already know their versions of those songs or you don't know their music, go check it out. These guys are the real deal. Guys, thank you so much.